I'm Alison, and welcome to Lesson 1 of our course, How to Create an L&D Strategy from Scratch. In this very first lesson together, we'll talk about purpose and the potential impact of a good L&D strategy. If you're watching this, you're probably already bought in. However, we know that it's sometimes hard to sell the importance of L&D to business stakeholders. So, we decided to include some statistics to help you with that. We'll also go through the classic components of an L&D strategy so that we have a clear picture of what we need to address when we design it. Lastly, we'll walk you through how to do the stakeholder mapping and learning and development inventory audit needed before you're able to jump into the actual design of your strategy. After all, if you don't know who you need to talk to about future capability needs, how can you go interview them? You'll also be hearing best practice sharing from our L&D experts Aki Friedrich, Ana Maria Dorgo, Evely Marconato, Nina Haber, and Lavinia Mahadintu. After this video, we highly encourage you to take action to complete the post-lesson activities. You can download the step-by-step guided templates to help you with them. Remember, you'll find where to download these templates in the description box down below. When you've completed the post-lesson activities, you'll be all prepared for Lesson 2. Before we jump in, take a quick look at the top right-hand corner. If you ever lose track of where we are in the lesson, check out the highlighted box. As you can see, we're currently in the introduction phase. Alright, let's talk about the elephant in the room. We know, of course, that L&D strategy is always the right thing to do. However, for many of us in fast-growing or resource-strapped companies, it constantly gets down-prioritized. Things change so quickly that investing a lot of time into creating an L&D strategy just never seems to be the most pragmatic approach. However, if we zoom out into the bigger picture, the data tells a consistent story. According to a study by LinkedIn, 94% of employees would stay longer with a company if there was investment in learning. SHRM also published that companies that spend at least $1,500 annually on training per employee report earning 24% more profit than those with smaller L&D budgets. As you can see, relevant and impactful L&D initiatives can impact everything from employee retention to employee productivity. I'll leave you with the wise words of a CEO. When asked by the CFO, "What happens if we invest in developing our people and they leave?" the CEO replies, "What happens if we don't and they stay?" So, what happens if we develop our people? This one's a little bit of a no-brainer. They will develop in their capabilities. The key here, though, is not that employees grow, but that they will develop in capabilities that are essential for the organization to thrive in the future. Take data skills, for example. Look at any organization's strategy, and you'll probably see digitalization in focus. It's tempting to think of hiring to close this gap. However, there is a digital skills shortage in the marketplace. An L&D strategy can include a roadmap to systematically upskill all employees in data skills. This way, in a year or two, everyone from branding and communications to HR and even sales would be able to analyze data and make informed recommendations to improve work. Here is where we often see the limitations of personalized feedback and individually driven development plans. Whilst they help an employee make incremental improvements, they often fail to align with and prepare the employee for future business capability needs. Whilst L&D strategy in the past focused more on increasing productivity, learning is now increasingly relevant in attraction and retention of talent. According to LinkedIn, 94% of employees will stay longer in an organization if they have opportunities to learn. Furthermore, employees in today's increasingly complex world understand what skills they need to survive. A study by Capgemini found that 47% of employees would actually move to another employer if they found that they provide better digital skills development. Closely related to attraction and retention is motivation and engagement. According to research from Gallup, only 29% of millennials are engaged in their jobs. L&D can play a huge role in increasing that engagement. A study from PwC about millennials at work found that the most important pull factor for employees is to have opportunities for career progression. Whilst there are other elements, of course, such as company growth that also impact that, L&D opportunities such as tailored learning plans can have a huge impact in supporting an individual's career progression. Additionally, the same survey also found that excellent training or development programs was listed as the third highest pull factor for an attractive employer. These statistics really show that L&D is no longer a nice to have. There are serious consequences on the attraction and retention of talent if employees don't feel that they are learning what they need to thrive in their careers. A good L&D strategy can also impact your employer branding. We've just learned how much employees value learning opportunities. Investments in L&D can help to build your company's reputation as employer of choice, and this in turn allows you to get top-tier talent. A study from LinkedIn found that a good employer brand results in a 50% cost per hire reduction, 50% more qualified applicants, reduces turnover by 28%, and decreases the time to hire by 1 to 2 times. Finally, an L&D strategy is one of your most powerful tools to help you create a values-based culture. Edgar Schein said, "Culture is the way we do things around here." Upon entry into an organization, employees will quickly learn from the people around them about how things are done. This may or may not be the way in which the organization actually wants things done. This is especially so when an organization is trying to tackle a transformation, for example, into a more data-driven culture. L&D can provide clear competencies or standards for what good looks like and development programs to support employees to learn and implement the way we should do things around here. At this point, let's do a little bit of a sanity check. Do you have enough statistics and arguments to help senior leadership understand the importance of L&D? If yes, great, let's move on. If not, check out the info box for links to all the studies we had mentioned. They're full of even more useful research and resources for you. Before we start discussing the components of an L&D strategy, I thought it might be useful to zero in on the purpose of an L&D strategy. In the simplest terms possible, an L&D strategy exists to build the capabilities of people so that they can deliver on business and operational priorities. Now that we've gone through purpose, it's time to do a deep dive into discussing what makes up a good L&D strategy. L&D strategies can range from enormously complex to bare-bones simplicity. In this course, we'll introduce a balanced approach that takes into consideration your need for agility and resource constraints while still being thorough enough that your L&D strategy is set up for success. In this slide here, you'll see the ingredients that, if incorporated well into your approach, will increase your strategy's impact. These ingredients have been adapted from McKinsey's Learning Academies model to something more suitable for a smaller organization or one that is rapidly scaling. We've also included a helpful graphic to show which components we'll touch on in each lesson. In this lesson, we'll focus on the first component of business leaders and HR co-owning the L&D strategy. I'm sure many of you listening right now have had experiences with business leaders that either expect HR to handle all matters related to people development, or have been faced with business leaders that complain about the relevancy or usefulness of L&D offerings. This often stems from a misunderstanding or lack of clarification about the roles and responsibilities for people development. If we go back to the purpose of an L&D strategy, it exists to build the capabilities of people so that they can deliver on business and operational priorities. This means that the business has a role to play as partner to L&D in defining, prioritizing, designing, and securing resources for capability building programs. As business leaders, they will also need to play a key role in embedding and promoting L&D initiatives in the day-to-day work. An L&D strategy that the business does not co-own is one that will be severely limited in impact. In Lesson 2, we'll cover the additional components of the need to be aligned fully with business strategy and assessing of capability gaps. L&D must take a critical look into employee capabilities so that they can determine which are the most essential for supporting the execution of the company's business strategy. A systematic approach to capability assessment will provide information for the prioritization of and choosing of appropriate L&D interventions. Then in Lesson 3, we'll teach you how to set clear goals and performance metrics so as to be able to measure the performance of your L&D strategy. In Lesson 4, we'll touch upon how to leverage systems and learning technology to design learning journeys that integrate seamlessly into the lives of your employees. We'll also address how to build in follow-up and reinforcement elements so as to support transfer of learning back to the job, just like the 70-20-10 model that we're using for this course. Finally, in Lesson 5, we'll cover how to execute, scale up, and integrate the strategy successfully into your existing HR management practices and processes. This would include integration with performance management, feedback practices, and existing technology. We've shared a lot of theory so far, so let's take a dive into reality and listen to our amazing HR experts Eveline Marconato, Nina Haber, and Lavinia Mehedintu tell us what are the key things they consider when designing their L&D strategy.
And how you do that, I think we need to go back to the foundations elements, starting with the why. Why you exist as an L&D organization, why you want to support your business, why are you there, and why do you want to provide the best learning solutions, for example, to your employees. You need to embrace that why and provide and fit your strategy with the business need. Once you have very clear vision on your why, then it's time to go to the what. What are you going to deliver to the business? What are you going to do to your employees? What is needed? What are the gaps in terms of skills, knowledge, competencies, behaviors? What are the root causes of those gaps? Are you going to play the role of the executor, L&D, or of the consultant? If you are truly consultant, asking the right questions, you know the what since the beginning, since day one.
Right, so what you definitely need is buy-in from the top management. And someone or maybe even two people who are really dedicated and really only focus on the topic of L&D. Because it doesn't require a lot of time, but it definitely requires focus. And of course, you need someone who's inspiring and motivating to do good marketing for L&D to get all the participants on board. And I think that's most important.
First, it needs to start with the business goals, knowledge, and skills needed to drive those business goals. This requires a lot of research, and it should all be there. Who you've talked to, your conclusions, everything. Sometimes people trust a strategy just by looking at how you approached building it. The second is considering talking to various people in various departments to understand where they are now and where they want to go. Are there any new projects in the planning phase or coming their way? Are they prepared to handle them? Will there be new people joining the company? If yes, how many? On which roles? What seniority? Find everything you can about everyone. Be like Sherlock Holmes. The third is you as an L&D being connected to what's happening in the world right now and what's to come. What are other companies in and beyond your industry doing? What types of learning methods do people appreciate? What practices from other industries can you bring in L&D? Fourth, you should consider the way you are presenting your strategy. You should have both a short and a longer version for everyone to check. You should have data, lots of data to prove your points. Data from inside your organization and from outside. If you're going to present your strategy, rehearse it like it's your first recital.
Great advice from our L&D experts to dig into the why and to ensure that the L&D strategy really aligns with purpose and business strategy. To follow their advice, we have to ensure that the business co-owns the L&D strategy. To find out who you need to work with, we have to do some stakeholder mapping. As a general rule of thumb, your stakeholders will fall into these 4 buckets. In the first bucket, business leaders that will work with you to give design input. In the second, line managers and employees that will provide support and advocacy for the initiatives. In the third, executive leaders that provide endorsement and resources. And in the fourth bucket, the group most people tend to miss out, those in the organization who may not currently show interest in supporting the design of the L&D strategy, but have enough power to become a roadblock or obstacle if they aren't happy with the direction of the strategy. We call these people the silent deal killers. It'll be prudent to reflect on who will be impacted by the rollout of the L&D strategy and need to be kept informed, aligned, and happy. Here is a helpful summary of the information needed from each type of stakeholder within the power team. Leaders that co-create the design of the L&D strategy with you will help you with providing answers to what capabilities are needed based on the business strategy. They'll also be able to share their insights on what are the current most important developmental needs. These leaders will be your trusty aides that you can turn to whenever you need to sanity check your design or have an information gap that needs to be filled. Next, you'll have to speak to the people who will be living and breathing the L&D strategy. With these line managers and employees, your goal would be to find out what is their experience with development. What do they crave? What do they need? In the living of previous development journeys, what challenges did they face? What support would they really appreciate? These conversations will provide incredible information for your design of learning journeys. Then, we'll have to address the movers and shakers. An L&D strategy needs endorsement and resource support from executive leaders, or it will be severely crippled. You'll have to find out if these leaders are believers, meaning, do they value and are all for implementing an L&D strategy? Or if they're perhaps more on the fence. In that case, your interview with them would really need to focus on what is needed for them to feel like their investment will be worth it. This group can also act as your compass to sanity check if the priorities identified with the design group are indeed what is most needed by the organization. Finally, the group we cannot neglect. With them, you'd want to focus on understanding how they would like to be kept informed, what level of involvement is desired, and if there are any deal killers. For example, a deal killer could be not wanting to have team members spend more than 6 hours a month on development at work. You've heard the theory. Now, let us listen to what our L&D experts Aki Friedrich and Anna Maria Dorgo have to say about who to involve and how much.
And I would say there's three groups. The first one is C-level and senior management. And this is not only because they obviously need to give a lot of approval later on, but because if they lead by example, it has such a strong impact, and that is super valuable. Second is work closely with stakeholders, like, for example, internal operations or finance, because they will be the ones that enable your initiatives, that make them happen and will support you. And this is absolutely crucial. And last but not least is really look in all departments. Don't only make it top down, and think about where are people that are passionate about learning and development. Because once you roll out initiatives, they will be the ones to multiply those initiatives and give you valuable feedback. And that is absolutely essential.
I involve three main stakeholders to different degrees when building my yearly strategy. Number one are the team leaders or the department managers. You will want to have their buy-in even before you put pen to paper. During the design phase of your strategy, they will help you pinpoint the expected performance level and identify the performance gap of their teams. If they don't believe your strategy will add value, you might as well not go any further. Number two, to design something valuable, involve individuals from your target audience early on. They can be team members, first-time leaders, practically the people you are designing the strategy for. They will help you make sense of their daily challenges and what they're missing to reach the business objectives. Number three is the budget owner. The L&D budget usually sits within HR, or in some cases, it might even be distributed between the different departments. Whomever they are, the budget owner will give you the final okay for your strategy. Their seal of approval will assure you that you have someone in the executive team advocating for your ideas and solutions.
As you've heard from our experts, involving different stakeholder groups is critical when developing your L&D strategy.
I really wanted to share this quote with you. It encapsulates perfectly the critical importance of thorough stakeholder alignment. A useful L&D strategy is one that is powerfully aligned to the business and the needs of the people it's meant to help.
Moving on to our very last topic for today, the learning audit. Before jumping into trying to create something new, it's useful to know what has come before and who made it happen. Not only will it give you information about the most important learning needs that others in the organization have prioritized, it also prevents you from reinventing the wheel and stepping into potential stakeholder conflicts. As a quick note, if you were to research what a learning audit is, you'll see approaches online that focus more on evaluating the impact and methodology of existing learning programs. The learning audit that we're asking you to do is more simple. It's simply focused on figuring out what exists right now and using it as a starting point for designing your L&D strategy. In the learning audit, you'll need to gather information on what learning and development initiatives already exist. Once you know what is there, you can find out what needs these initiatives are trying to address, who endorsed them, and how happy are people with the impact of these initiatives. A little warning though from experience, conducting the learning audit can seem quite simple, but trying to find out everything that exists is often impossible. Stop at good enough, and if you miss a few, no worries. They'll often surface in your stakeholder interviews. Alright, remember the 70 and 20 from our 70-20-10 learning journey? We've come to that part. To prepare yourself and your team for both the informational and influencing interviews with your power team in the next lesson, we need to do some groundwork first. First step, you'll need to find out who needs to be in the power team. If you look in the description box below, you'll find a link to download our step-by-step guide that will help you with creating your stakeholder map. Depending on the size of your organization and how familiar you are with it, this exercise will take you anywhere from 15 minutes to 2 hours. At this stage, there will be a lot of questions that you can't answer as you create the map. Don't worry, it's perfectly normal. When you run into an information gap, we encourage you to ask around your organization and slowly try to find the answers that you need. After you've finished your stakeholder map, you'll need to conduct a learning audit. The good news is that this process and stakeholder mapping often assist each other. As you're seeking out who has run development activities before, you'll also be finding out who your potential design buddies are, who will endorse and provide resources for learning activities, and who should you turn to when trying to seek support and advocacy for the initiatives moving forward.
Congratulations! You've made it to the end of lesson 1 of how to create an L&D strategy from scratch. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave a comment down below and we'll try our very best to get back to you. See you in lesson 2, Understanding Strategy, Needs and Constraints, where you'll learn how to conduct these information and influencing interviews with members of your power team. We'll also cover all important topics like L&D budget calculations.